everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Living Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I am so grateful for this space that I have carefully and intentionally cultivated over the past few years because it gives me the opportunity to have such meaningful and often profound conversations. And I'm really looking forward to that today. And I'm excited to welcome my guest, Venice Jardine, on today. So welcome, Venice.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Ditto. I'm very, very happy you're here as well. Venice and I met for the first time earlier this year, 2025.
hmm
It was at an event that was sponsored by That's Church podcast, Emily and Ashley, who are sisters. And it was the International Women's Day celebration. So at this event, the International Women's Day celebration, there were 4 presenters, and you were one of them. And I was really moved by what each one of you shared, and they were all different. And none was for sure something this space that I have created, and in some ways I have felt thrust into. I'll say invited, but often I feel I was thrust into it, is one that is very not black and white.
hmm
And each of your presentations, each of your remarks were very much not black and white, very much colorful, very much expansive, inviting all of those in the room to bigger, um, deeper, more expressive faith, more expressive on an individual level of the things that are most meaningful to us and most profoundly touch us on our, on a spiritual level, on a almost transcendent level, one that's hard to put into words. So with that, I would love for you to take a moment to introduce yourself to our listeners. Just share with us all the things that you would like to share, particularly those that have contributed to where you are at now, what the point in your journey that you're at today.
Yeah. Well, I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I was born to parents who were members of the church.
Mhm.
I grew up in the church, and it was so good for me. It was everything I needed, and gave me a really solid foundation of spirituality and morals that have guided me throughout my whole life. Um, but I wasn't raised in a very traditional family. My parents were divorced when I was 6 years old.
Mhm.
I was raised by my single mom and really my single grandma. I only had
Okay.
sisters. So it was all of us women and our female dog. And and I was raised in southern Utah in Cedar City, which is,
Okay.
a pretty working class area, pretty conservative area, but my family was not very conservative. And so
Mm.
in some ways I was always raised with a little bit of that tension. Um, but I don't know that I necessarily saw it as tension. It just felt normal to me in a lot of ways.
Interesting.
Um, and I think in some ways maybe I was shielded from some of because my mom was a single mom. Um, I think I was shielded maybe from some of the messages about, what women should do. I don't know. I just didn't experience that growing up.
Mm.
That wasn't part of my growing up. So really I just kind of had this idealistic uh version of the church in my head because my experience in the church was so life-giving to me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
but as I got older, especially in college, And especially as the church kind of started doubling down on its stance on LGBTQ issues, that's when I really started to feel a lot of tension in my faith. And, there was a lot of stuff I could maybe explain away or use apologetics for a while,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
um, I think especially after I yeah, just as I got older in college, even into me after college getting married, um, it really kind of hit its peak where I felt like I didn't have any more answers. I couldn't explain things away anymore. And for a while, I just dealt with the tension, and I think there's a lot of value in that tension. But I think I got to a certain point where I felt like I had to make a decision. Should I stay in the church or should I go? Um,
Mhm.
because these values were so in conflict with one another.
And when was
And
this?
this was probably around the pandemic time.
Okay.
Um, and looking back, I think I realized part of it was that I wasn't around the community of the church
Mhm.
because it was during the
Mhm.
pandemic. I think a lot of people experienced sort of a faith crisis or some type of of their faith during the pandemic, and I do think that that's a big part of it. Is the community wasn't as
Mhm.
present, um, and really it was sort of an agonizing time. There was a lot of angst. I was
Mhm.
I was angry about a lot of things. I struggled with a lot of things. And really ultimately, there were a lot of different experiences, a lot of spiritual experiences that I had, and a lot of experiences with other people that helped me feel very supported, very not alone in feeling the way that I did.
Mhm.
And if there was one moment that like changed things, it was really just having this very like in-depth conversation with my husband, where we were talking about like, okay, if I did leave, what would that mean? What would that mean for us? What would that mean for our families? How would I tell your mom? You know, like
Mhm.
what would that look like? And and he was so incredibly supportive and loving, and I get a little emotional every time I talk about it, but he just at one point, looked me in the eye and said, I it would be hard for me. It would be hard for me if you left the church, but I would not feel differently about you. I would still love you. And I think something about that made me realize like, okay, if I stay, I'm not doing it out of fear of what the consequences would be if I left.
Mhm.
And once I knew that I wasn't staying out of fear, it opened up a lot of possibilities to me about the way I could think about it. And really, I just realized I want to stay. I've had all of these spiritual
Mhm.
experiences. This is where God wants me. This is
Mhm.
where I want to be. These are my people. This is the best way that I know this is I can do so much good
Mhm.
by staying in the church. Um and uh Yeah, I feel very passionate about this topic. I feel very good about my
Mhm.
decision to stay in the church. Um, I value the church so much, and it's a huge part of my life, a huge part of my identity. And um and also it's not black and white. And there are people who leave the church
Mhm.
out of a place of integrity. I stayed in the church out of a place of integrity, but there are a lot of different decisions people make, and ultimately, this felt like so amazing to me in this new way of thinking about the world, and um, even praying for guidance. I basically got this prompting that I should go to grad school. As my
Mhm.
undergrad, I studied psychology and anthropology. I felt like I should back to grad school and get a master's in anthropology. And anthropology is the study of peoples and cultures. And the culture I studied was
Mhm.
Latter-day Saints. And I specifically studied Latter-day Saints who stay in the church despite these tensions, despite disagreeing with some aspects of the church or its teachings, and why people stay and how people stay. And I think I thought, like, well, I've experienced this. I know what works. I'm going to find a bunch of people just like me who have experienced the same thing as me and who have the exact same outlook on life as me. And it's going to be amazing. And then we're going to help a lot of people be able to stay in the church if that's what they want, like, but really what I found is that there is a huge spectrum and it really changed the way that I think about the church again. There are people who are atheists who stay in the church. There are people who, you know,
Really?
all across the spectrum, there are tons of people for a lot of different reasons who stay in the church. Um, and it was just such a beautiful experience getting to know these people and hearing their stories and just how different they all are. I didn't find a lot of people who had the exact same situation as I did, but I found a lot of connection with all of these people who have had such different experiences, who think about things so differently. Um, and but we're all here. We're all this like ragtag group of people staying in the
Mhm.
church and trying to do good in the world.
Yeah. You've said some really, really fascinating and wonderful things, and I don't know where to start to dive a little deeper. Um, let's start here. You mentioned, in college is when this tension for you personally really started to increase. That's when you really started to feel it, as you said, and it was particularly you mentioned LGBTQ plus issues.
Mhm.
I didn't get the feeling that that was the only one, but you did
No,
mention
certainly
that
not.
one. You did mention
Yeah,
that one, and, that resonates with me deeply,
right.
being the parent of a queer child. I would love to know, or if you feel comfortable sharing, what some of those specific things were, and one of the reasons I think my interest is piqued, it's a personal interest, yes, because the I'll just call them issues. I don't know what else to call them. It doesn't quite feel fair to call them issues, but concerns,
Yeah,
issues surrounding this topic, they've not gone away. And
yeah,
my child in particular is identifies as transgender, and for them it has been particularly more pointed
yes.
with the recent I don't know if you heard about the Supreme Court cases that the church submitted some briefs to, and that was
Mm,
just this past weekend. And then a year ago, the updates to the handbook.
right.
Um, there's a lot of activity still
Yeah.
around this issue that I personally know quite a few individuals who are transgender and or
Mm,
non-binary that have they've had to step away because they literally do not feel like they are welcome.
yeah.
So I'm curious to know kind of what was it about that issue that pricked at your heart or that was troubling or that you said that you really started to feel them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, growing up, I was friends with, um, a lot of LGBTQ people, but at the time, I didn't know
Mhm.
they were LGBTQ, you know? So I just don't
Really?
think it was
That's
as
great.
present in my, uh, awareness, I guess.
Mhm.
But in college, I had a lot of, friends who were LGBTQ, um, and yeah, during that time was also when the church, the policy about children of gay couples not being able to be baptized.
Mhm. In
And that
2015,
was
10
also
years.
when gay marriage was legalized. It felt like one thing after another, where the church was speaking out about these issues in ways that felt wrong to
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
And I had a lot of gay friends. I remember at one point one of my gay friends called me at night when the news broke about, I think it was about the children of gay couples not being able to be baptized, and he was just, like, crying to me, and
Mhm.
I didn't know what to say. I felt heartbroken, I felt angry, I didn't know. I wished that I could give him an answer
Mhm.
for why it made sense, but it didn't make sense. And, and you're absolutely right. The truth is, we have not done well enough as a community at this point to create a space where all members that are LGBTQ can stay.
Mhm.
Um, and, a lot of that is because of, teachings and policies that are in place. But a lot of it is because of us, because of the way that we deal with these brothers and
Mhm.
sisters of ours.
Mhm.
Um, and so during that time, there were just quite a few things that happened that really kind of turned up the pressure
Mhm.
for a lot of people. Um, and for me internally, it turned up the pressure as well, where I just realized like this is hurting people. I was watching people I loved be hurt,
Mhm.
and I've always been very spiritual, have had a very close relationship and connection to God. And I
Mhm.
couldn't quite square the God that I knew and understood with some of the teachings and policies that were in
Mhm.
place. And I really think a big turning point for me was being able to just say, I disagree. I disagree with the church.
Tell me more about that. Like, is that something you said out loud? Or, I mean, was it something you wrote in your journal, just, saying it to
Yeah.
yourself, acknowledging it to yourself? Did you share it with family or loved ones? Like, I think that's a really big deal. Like, I love that
Yes.
you
Yes.
are saying and sharing that right here, right now,
Yeah.
because that's important because that means you are listening to your intuition that
Yeah.
and by hearing it and acknowledging it, then that's strengthening that relationship so that the next time you'll recognize it even more, right?
Mhm.
It's a process, of course, but you had to trust yourself.
Yes. And uh that was it was difficult for me. I don't even know it was a process for sure. I think at first it was just between me and myself, and then it was between me and God, and then it
Mhm.
was I said it out loud to a few people, or I asked questions to a few people. And I think I tried to ride the line for a while. I apologetics are kind of helpful with that. They can help you give
Mhm.
other perspectives to say like, well, here's why it makes a little bit of sense or something like that. But ultimately, um, distinctly remember there was a time that I heard a friend say something similar, that she disagreed. And
Mhm.
it was this big moment for me where I was like, oh, I can say that. I can say that. And I
Mhm.
really think that was even modeled to me. My mom is an incredibly faithful person, and she, all throughout growing up, she disagreed with some
Mhm.
of the church's stances and policies on things. Um, but even so, I just think I was a young person thinking in black and white terms is honestly healthy, at a certain age. It's just
Yeah.
part of being human. Um, but it did feel scary to admit, because it felt like if I admitted that I disagreed, then maybe everything would unravel,
Mhm.
which wasn't actually the case.
Mhm.
Um, the entire church does not unravel if you disagree.
Mhm.
And and yeah, at a certain point, you just realize like the logical conclusion is to disagree, that you can't. I mean, there have been so many conflicting
Yeah.
teachings throughout church history.
Yeah.
It's normal, and it's okay, and it is an
Mhm.
act of faith, I would say, to
Yeah.
disagree with even some of the the party stances. You know, it's an
Mhm,
act of faith to be able to say, I disagree, and that doesn't mean that I don't believe in
mhm,
these bigger visions.
mhm. And that's one of the things I have learned through this journey of mine that I'm 6.5 years into now, is that the opposite of faith isn't doubt, it's certainty. And
Mhm.
there's
Yes.
no way to have 100% certainty.
Mhm.
Some people, I think, have convinced themselves that they can have 100% certainty in their life. But I haven't found that to be true. And I've actually found it to be more healthy for me to lean into and even embrace uncertainty, be able to
Yes.
exercise that faith. Like, you know what? I know a lot less now than I used to think that I knew, right? And
Mhm.
I'm okay with that. Being able to just step into that space of, I'm not really certain. There's some things that I realize are quite unknown for
Yeah.
me at this stage, and that is okay.
Mhm.
I can hold space for that. I can, actually find peace often in knowing I don't there's certain things that I used to think that I knew with absolute certainty that I don't any longer, and that actually brings me peace. The word
Mhm.
"and" also brings a lot of peace. I think "and"
Yes.
helps us get away from the black and the white
Yeah.
thinking. We can forget that this can be true and this can also be true.
Yes.
Two seemingly opposing or contradictory things can be
Yes.
simultaneously true.
And,
Um,
well, there I'm using
uh-huh,
and I think, a part of my journey in some ways was like, I guess I don't know anything. I guess everything is meaningless, you know? If you can go to the other extreme as well and say no one knows anything. There nothing has meaning.
mhm,
It
mhm,
that but that, I would not say that that is wisdom. For me, I think that was maybe a part of my journey that I needed to go through. But now I'm able to say, I don't know much, honestly. However, I do think there is wisdom in hanging your hat somewhere and saying,
mhm,
I don't know a lot, um, but I believe this is where goodness is, and I'm going to follow that. I think there's
mhm,
wisdom in, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I Yeah, there are very few
mhm,
things now that I would say, "I know this is true."
mhm,
Um, but I feel the image I have in my head is that, like, I have my beliefs, I'm holding my beliefs in my
mhm,
hand. I hold them a lot less tightly now.
mhm,
Um, I'm not holding them in such desperation.
mhm,
And when I hold them, I'm still holding the beliefs that I have. But when I'm not doing it so desperately, actually more can be added.
mhm,
More can be added to what I'm already holding. And if something does fall, I am able to be curious about it rather than feeling like
yeah.
everything is crashing down.
That's that's the hidden or the not obvious blessing of not being so hard and fast, like
Mm.
gripping your beliefs. I think you used gripping or grasping.
Gripping was a better word. Thank you. That was
But
good.
well, no, same concept, because then I think that's what was so devastating for me in the beginning of this journey. It literally felt like an earthquake had ravaged through our home, but we were the
Yeah.
only ones hit because of the meaning that I had placed on what this meant for our family, and the meaning that I had placed on
Mm.
what it meant for me and my goodness. as a person, as a
Yeah.
parent,
Yeah.
as a believer or whatever. I'm no longer in that place. That place
Mm.
is very far in my past. But I don't know if you shared that day in March or not, but I wasn't expecting you to share that there was a time you were deciding whether to stay or not.
Yeah.
Because if I'm honest, these issues that are so fresh and happening right now
Yeah.
are putting people, those who identify as transgender and non-binary, and their families in a place of trying to find where they feel loved, where they feel welcome, where they can feel
Yes.
the love of God. I really appreciate you saying, um, you said you decided to stay in the end. I stayed out of a place of integrity. And there are others who leave
Yes.
out of a place of integrity.
Yeah.
Um, not everybody feels that generous in how you are phrasing that.
Yeah.
It's actually really beautiful because you're that is the type of inclusive space I think that is needed, the type of non-judgmental space uh, that congregations could really benefit from
Yeah.
instead of you must be a certain way or else you're not one of us.
Yes.
I mean, as you were talking, I thought, gosh, every congregation needs a Venice.
Well, I think every congregate and I guess that's the thing is you can be I mean, I'm not trying to say you can be the Venice, but I just mean each of us has influence within our community,
Hmm.
and you can be the person in your ward that welcomes someone who's transgender. And you can even be honest with them and say,
Hmm.
like, I worry that people in this ward might treat you differently, but I need you to know that I won't. And
Hmm.
I'm going to be here to stick up for you if someone says something. But really, I mean, the incredible thing about our faith community, um, even in the social sciences world, Latter-day Saints are often held up as like the standard of communities, of religious communities. There are a lot of things that make our communities unique and that we do well. You know, we have rich people and poor people in the same ward. We don't choose our pastors, we don't choose our bishops based on who we agree with the most. We don't choose our congregations based on where our friends are going and who
Hmm.
we like best. You're put into community with people who are different from you.
Hmm.
So really, this is a strength of our community, and also there is a lot more that we need to work on.
Hmm.
But and it can be so easy to feel very hopeless.
Hmm.
Um, but every person in the ward community has some influence, whether it's making a comment in Sunday school, whether it's sitting by someone who's feeling lonely, whether it's
Hmm.
um, giving yourself a calling in the ward to, you know, do whatever it is to support, as you're doing, to support families who have a queer child. Um,
Hmm.
there are so many things that we can do within our sphere of influence. But I also just want to say, if there's anyone listening to this who really is just in the thick of it, um, I I see you and you're not crazy. And this is so difficult. This
Hmm.
is so difficult. I think especially at the peak of all of that angst for me, it was genuinely one of the most difficult periods of my life. I didn't know if
Hmm.
everything that I had based my life on, if I just did it by mistake or if I made it up or was crazy, I felt really alone and
Mhm.
really I just I don't want anyone to ever have to feel like that. And so I just want to say, like, to anyone who is experiencing that, I see you. And there
I
are
appreciate
lots of us who can walk with you through it.
I really appreciate your openness around this topic. And I appreciate that you do see yourself as one in your congregation who will stand next to and stand up for those who are marginalized and discriminated. And I agree, each congregation needs someone who can do that. And there are those, myself included, who tried to for a while. And
Yeah.
for my own mental health and my own integrity, I have stepped back from
Yeah.
regular participation because
Yeah.
it just wasn't healthy for me. And so I think hearing this come from someone who maybe I shouldn't assume, but who is an ally,
Mhm.
who isn't necessarily a parent of, a queer, transgender, and non-binary child, like those are the folks that if enough of them started to speak up, and speaking up can just be, you can sit by me. You can
Yeah.
use whatever bathroom you would like.
Yeah.
You can come with me to this activity. I love you. I want you there. I see you. Just like you just said. I think the more that people would feel like step into that bravery, step into that courage, then maybe fewer non-binary transgender folks and their families would be stepping away. Um, because this is our lives. These are our
Yeah.
people. These are our
Yes.
loved ones. And these decisions are not taken lightly, like you've
Yeah.
shared. You did not take it lightly at all. It was excruciating. It's excruciating for me now.
Yeah.
Um, but when these briefs were filed to the Supreme Court just last week, where the church spearheaded the effort and urges the Supreme Court to reject transgender status as a protected class, arguing it would limit religious freedom and is essentially asking the court to prioritize that religious freedom policy, what have you, over the transgender individual rights. Like, that's heartbreaking
Yeah.
as a parent.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's heartbreaking for any human being, but that's that is not a small issue. That is not a decision that's taken lightly by anybody. I did not foresee this conversation going here, but I really appreciated you sharing so openly about your
Yeah.
journey. I wish more people could see that and feel that, and we could just normalize. It might
Yeah.
be a part of your journey, whoever might be listening, and
Yeah.
that's okay. There's no shame in that.
Right.
Zero. And the growth that you have experienced since then and who you are now. I mean, I I would venture to say you're a very different person, even though I didn't know you, but I understand the nature of the wrestle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I certainly think about things differently. Um, and I wouldn't go back. Um, and there are cycles in life, and even still, I find myself, at certain points of the cycle, and hopefully, I keep growing,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
who knows, in 10 years, I might look back again now
Mhm.
and feel like I think about things incredibly differently than how I do now? Um, but yeah, but thank you for sharing that too. I mean, I really do just feel very passionate about, yeah, just normalizing being open about our struggles. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
um, at
Yes.
church, the best. I mean, I don't want to throw um all elders quorums under the bus or anything like that. But my husband goes to church, and on Sundays when the men meet together and the women meet together, um, the men don't usually have as great of an experience as the women do. And we've talked about, my husband and I talk about this a lot, trying to dissect, like, what is the difference? And really, the difference is that the women treat it as a support group, and it's very much like open and
Mhm.
vulnerable. And I'm struggling, um, and my family is struggling, and I don't know what to do about this. And like, sometimes I just worry that I'm ruining my kids, and everyone's like sharing openly. And those are the best Sundays when people can be very open and vulnerable. Um, and oftentimes in the men's group, it's a little bit more of a, well, technically this doctrine is correct because this. So that is not always as productive of an experience, like
Mhm.
arguing over doctrine
Mhm.
is not always as productive of an experience as really supporting each other
Mhm.
in a support group. And really, it
Yeah.
just takes one person. And you've clearly done that with your podcast. You have been open and vulnerable and created this space where people can share their stories and feel supported. And that is worth its weight in gold. It really just takes one person to open up and be vulnerable,
Mhm.
to give everyone else permission to also be vulnerable.
I 1000% agree with that. I think we have this idea of being a leader all
Mm,
wrong. I read something
yeah.
on social media recently. I don't know who to give credit to, but basically, being a leader doesn't mean you have followers behind you. Like you have this already built in place support. Being a leader means you go first. And that is what, like, that's what you're doing. That's what the other women who spoke that night in March of this year are doing. And yes, in some ways, I feel like I have gone first
Mm, yeah.
in the spaces that I have created. And it's scary in
It's
the
very
beginning,
scary. It's very
especially in the
brave.
beginning. But even though you and I are having this conversation right now, I mean, my heart's feeling it. Sometimes my heart is beating a little faster. I've gotten emotional a few times, you know,
Mhm.
because this is real life.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that that's the only way to true connection is being truly vulnerable and showing up
Yeah.
authentically. So
Yes.
anyway, thank you so much for sharing with us some of the hard parts of your journey. I Starting this year, I added the word living to the front end of the title of my podcast
Mm,
because I came to this point where I really wanted to focus on the life and the living, the joy that comes on the other side of taking the reins of our faith, spiritual journey. And there are true moments of just happiness and bliss
mhm.
that happen as we do that. We discover new things about ourselves. We discover or find a depth we didn't know existed within. So I'd love to hear you share. Just, I know I've taken so much of your time. Just what are some of those points or those moments that you have experienced on this journey as you have claimed your spiritual sovereignty? Sovereignty.
Mm. Yeah, I would say, um, I really cherish mystery now. And, and,
That
it's
sounds like
just
a fantastic title for this episode.
but I
Ooh,
mean,
I love it.
there's I feel less panicked about the unknown. I still certainly experience a lot of that. We're human,
Mhm,
and we wanna guarantee, we wanna be safe, we want to, be understood,
mhm,
we want to know that we're okay. But I just think that the world opens up a little bit, and you can handle uncertainty a little bit better, which applies to all aspects of life, really. Um, and so that's been just fun and liberating. Um,
That's awesome.
and also, and this, I mean, not to, I don't want to take up too much time, but this fits with some of the findings of my thesis research, which is um, I interviewed a lot of people for my thesis research. I went to
Mhm.
different events. I spent a lot of time with Latter-day Saints in both New York City and Salt Lake County. And then gathering all the data, whether it was from interviews or things I observed or whatever else, I coded it. So basically, you look at all of the patterns in the data
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
see what patterns pop up. And I used a theoretical framework called the three ethics. So basically, you put those data into three different categories, and this framework has been used in cultures all across the world. And when making ethical decisions, people tend to use these three ethics. The categories are autonomy, community, and divinity. So
Mm.
all of those are at play with pretty much everyone, even people who are atheists. They still might appeal to like a higher ethic or something like that, and that would fall under the divinity ethic. But um,
Mm.
as Latter-day Saints, we talk a lot about agency. That would fit
Mhm.
in autonomy, but we're very, very community oriented, and obviously very divinity oriented as well. And basically, what I found in this group of people who were staying in the church, even though they experienced a lot of tensions, um, the ethics they appealed to most were community and divinity. But instead of appealing to the version of divinity that is church oriented or
Mhm.
oriented towards the church as an institution, it became completely um, decoupled from, not completely decoupled from the church as an institution, but much more focused on the community. So, put another way, their faith became less tied to the institutional church and more tied to the ways that they lived out their faith by being in community with others in
Mm.
the church. So, I heard a lot of like, I'm staying in the church to help it change, and I'm staying in the church to serve other people. And I'm actually just going to, if I can, read a quote. This
Of
was like a
course.
very emblematic quote. This is from a woman I interviewed who's very service oriented, like a key figure in her ward. And she said, I really realized that church wasn't about what I could get out of it as much as what I could give. I mean, hopefully you go to church and you do receive spiritual nourishment. But the nice thing is if your expectation is just that you're there to give to other people, then you're not disappointed so frequently, you know? You're there trying to scan the crowd and see, is there anyone that looks sad or is there anyone that looks lonely? And that was really the sentiment that I found in this group of people. This was a very diverse group. Again, like belief was all across the spectrum. Um, but really they felt committed to serving other people.
Wow.
Um, and it's a hard thing to divorce. It's a hard thing to divorce the institutional church from the church as a community.
It is.
Um, but uh but it's also a really beautiful experience. And so that's another thing for me that gives me a lot of life is community and just building up a community, contributing to a community instead of asking, like, what am I going to get out of this? Like trying to contribute and create a space of
Mhm.
belonging and serve with other people, even people that I like fundamentally disagree with on a lot of issues. Serving together is incredibly meaningful and very human.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree with that. That's really beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing that that quote. I would love if you're agreeable to leave a link to your
Yeah.
thesis in the show
Yeah,
notes.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm sure there would be many that would be interested in reading more about your research. So thank you for doing that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, what
It
was
was
the
a great
title of it?
experience. The title of my thesis, I think, is I'll Stay Where You Want Me to Stay: How Latter-day Saints Navigate uh, Conflicting Values While Remaining Committed to Their Faith, or
Wow,
similar, something like that.
fantastic. What a great topic. Well, Venice, my last question that I ask of all of my guests reflects the title of my podcast, and that is, what does it mean to you to live beyond the shadow of doubt?
Mm. I think just to live beyond the shame of doubt. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's really it, you know? Anything mentionable is manageable. That's a quote from the
Ooh,
apostle Mr. Rogers, and, I mean, I live by
that's
it, you know?
fabulous.
If we can talk about it and take the shame away, it's
That's great.
manageable.
Love it. I love that so, so much. Um, so just a few more questions. I'm looking for 1 to 2 word answers so that our
Okay.
listeners can get to know you a little bit more. Tell us your favorite book or a favorite book.
Ooh, Brothers Karamazov.
Awesome. And are you an introvert or are you an extrovert?
Probably an ambivert, but more introvert, yeah.
Yeah, same. And who is your favorite artist?
Um, I immediately thought of musician,
That works.
and, because I love music, and one of my favorites right now is Natalia Lafourcade.
Mm,
She's great.
that's new for me. And are you a night owl or a morning lark?
Morning Lark.
And who is your celebrity crush?
Oh, probably John Mulaney.
Okay. And then, do you do still or carbonated water, diet soda, or some other fun beverage?
Oh,
Indulgent.
Stillwater.
That is a favorite. And then finally, the furthest place that you have traveled.
Oh, good question. Um, I did field work for anthropology in Thailand, so that's
Ooh,
probably the furthest, but also went to Cambodia during that trip. So yeah, I don't know which was further, but one of those.
I don't know either. They both seem pretty far.
Yeah.
It's a tie. Well, Venice, if folks wanted to connect with you, reach out with questions and whatnot, what would be the easiest way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'm not really a social media person,
Okay.
but I love email. So they
Hey.
could email me at venicejardine@gmail.com.
Okay. We'll make sure and include that in the show notes. Again, thank you so very much for your time, for your heart, your thoughts, and sharing of you with
Yeah,
us
thank
today.
you. This was lovely to be able to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Same. I feel the same.